I remember the shock of when he first did it. And there is this horror and terror that washes over you and never goes away.
I've known people that have attempted or committed suicide.
It's a public health crisis and not a moral failing.
And I think it's not something that we should just be putting on the back burner.
It needs to be talked about, to be addressed.
There is no shame in seeking help. There is hope, there is healing.
Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade, two celebrities just within the last week whose lives came to a tragic end, both of them at their own hands.
And tonight we are bringing back a conversation about suicide and its impact on our community. And frankly, it's tough to talk about. Hope over suicide. It's a disturbing trend on a dramatic rise. It's touching our communities in ways that are too important for us to ignore.
Yeah, suicide is up more than 30% in the last 20 years. Just take a look at this map. It shows the increases in suicide rates around the nation. Now, according to the CDC, suicide rates have increased by as much as 58% since 1999. Unbelievable. The only state where the rate went down between 1999 and 2016 was Nevada, but even then it was just a 1% decline.
Here is the number to the National Suicide Prevention Line. You see it here on your screen. It is 1-800-273-TALK. It is free, it is confidential, and it is available to you 24/7.
And we also invite you tonight to join us on the 11 Alive Facebook page right now, where we have experts taking your questions from now until 6:30.
Our panel includes Hannah Piercy, who has become a source of hope for those hurting after dealing with the loss of from suicide herself. 11 Alive's Jennifer Leslie has her story.
I got my boo-boo. It's okay.
Hannah Piercy is raising her two children as a single mother, but she doesn't feel alone.
I haven't let go of Caleb, but I would just want them to know their dad is still here. He loved them so much, so much.
Hannah's husband Caleb died by suicide when she was pregnant with their son Wally, and their daughter Aslan was only 1.5.
It did not make sense until after it happened, and then it's like all the puzzle pieces just fell into line, and I'm like, oh my God.
Hannah and Caleb met through an online dating site and fell in love fast. He put himself through Georgia Tech to become the first in his family to graduate from college.
And then he got his dream job as an engineer for Harley Davidson. He loved motorcycles, he played guitar, he sang. We dove head first into starting a family.
Say dada. Dada.
Dada. But Hannah says she started to see a change in Caleb that scared them both.
Because he had bipolar disorder, and we didn't know. He would get this look in his eyes when this happened. His eyes would go so dark and he wouldn't look like himself. He did not want to be sick. He was scared of being sick. He was very scared of what that would mean.
Caleb eventually agreed to start therapy. He went to 2 sessions before using a gun to take his own life.
If I remember the shock of when he first did it, I wasn't present mentally. It's just this fog, this really thick, heavy fog, and depression, and feeling like, how do I function? And I got to a point, especially when Wally was born, where I said, I need my life back, and I wanted to talk about it.
Hannah did more than talk about it. She created a Facebook group called Stigmatized to document her journey as a suicide survivor and connect with others impacted by suicide.
Literally every person I talk to has some sort of story to tell. Maybe they haven't lost somebody, but they know somebody that struggled. They themselves have struggled.
In just 2 months, she says 24 suicides have been prevented through the outreach of the stigmatized community.
We are not mental health professionals, and I have to stress that we are just people that care.
We're here to help.
She even used Facebook Live to show how the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline works.
We can call for our friends and family as well, correct, if we're worried about them?
Yes.
I did the very best I could by my husband with what I knew then. If we were to start educating people more, letting them know what some of these warning signs and red flags look like, I believe that we could help prevent a lot more suicides. There is no shame in seeking help.
An important message there. The CDC reports most, but not all people who take their lives exhibit warning signs. They include feeling hopeless, threatening to hurt oneself, or talking about wanting to die. There will also be increased alcohol or drug use or extreme mood swings. The more of these signs a person shows, the greater the risk. Mental illness is it's tough to play, or it's thought rather to play a role in 90% of suicides, but a proper diagnosis can be a lifesaver. But as Jennifer Leslie reports, for 28-year-old Kyle Bem, it started with a cry for help and a family ready to listen.
Kyle Bem is tired of the silence when it comes to suicide.
It does make a lot of people uncomfortable to talk about suicide because it is stigmatized. It's something when a loved one commits suicide, it becomes sort of a family secret.
But Kyle's family is different. They want to talk about it. In fact, his dad serves as chairman of the Georgia chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
It's something that affects all of us. It's not just them. It's us. It's our family. It's our sons and daughters. It's our mothers and fathers.
The Bames have learned through experience that talking about suicide can be a lifesaver.
Knowing that I wasn't alone feeling this really served as the foundation for seeking help.
Kyle was a sophomore engineering major at Vanderbilt University when he began to struggle with anxiety. By his junior year, he was having delusions and hallucinations. He even considered suicide.
I couldn't really deal with going to class and I couldn't focus on my work. So that was kind of my external indicator that it's like I either had to just like quit, just in general, just give up, or I needed to reach out to somebody.
He did reach out by sending an email to his mom. His dad still has a copy of the email he sent Kyle in return. He wrote, "First and foremost, we love you very much and are so proud to have you as our son. Second, thanks for reaching out and speaking directly about a difficult issue. Third, we're sorry that you're having a very difficult experience, and we will do everything we can and that you will allow to move to a much better experience." He ended the email with this: "You are so cherished."
Looking back, that's probably one of the better things that we did, which was not to recoil, not to to be concerned, but not to sort of roll that concern back on and saying you shouldn't feel this or you shouldn't do that. Or
the productive thing was just listening to what I had to say, no judgment, and just being there.
Kyle took medical leave from Vanderbilt and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He began taking medication and spent 4 months in an outpatient program at Skyland Trail, a nonprofit mental health treatment center. He later went back to school and graduated from Mercer University.
I'm doing very well. By the standard metrics, I have a really good job. I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of people who care about me very deeply.
so many people may experience the pain and the hurt and the consideration of suicide, but the vast majority of people who do survive and then thrive.
We are streaming this special newscast on the 11 Alive Facebook page with a panel ready to answer your questions. Throughout her story, you have met Hannah Piercy, who is on our panel tonight. Also there, you see Dr. Ben Hunter, who is a psychiatrist and medical director of outpatient services at Skyland Trail. Both will stay with us through the 6:30 hour to keep this conversation going.
And coming up, we'll take a look at what schools are doing to focus on hope over suicide and why students are playing a critical role in prevention.